Welcome everyone to Vector Institute's Careers in AI, spotlighting applications in manufacturing and robotics with Canvas Analytics and Clearpath Robotics, two Vector industry sponsors. My name is Melissa Judd, and on behalf of everyone at Vector, thank you for spending this hour with us. And a very special thank you to our two presenters for taking the time out of their busy schedules to be with us today. We're now going to transition to a bit of a conversation, and I'd like to introduce my dear colleague, Joanna Thum, who is the Program Manager of Student Engagement at Vector, to lead us in that conversation.
Hi, so thank you for the introduction, Melissa. So now we'll take a little bit more time to talk about their roles within the organizations, their career journeys, and more about their opinions on AI in the sector more broadly. So if you have any more questions in that realm or any follow-up questions, feel free to enter them in the Q&A below, and we will get to as many as we can during today's talk. So to get us started, could you each share a little bit more about your education experience and your work experience and how that led you to your current role, and what kind of got you interested in your respective sectors in robotics and manufacturing? So I guess Mingjie could start.
Yeah, as Melissa mentions, I graduated from U of T as well. And I was also once in Vector. And after I graduated, I started to look for what can we do with AIs, and in particular, what can we do with reinforcement learning. All of the RL was done using games, in particular in a lot of paper was done in using playing Terra, for example. And I was looking for opportunity to really apply it and help and see whether it can really work in real world, and which led me to this position.
James?
Yeah, so as mentioned in my intro, I graduated from mechatronics at the University of Waterloo for my bachelor's, and then I moved on to the Waterloo Autonomous Vehicles Lab to do my master's in robotics specifically. I think really what led me there, I was quite involved in the university robotics team from nearly the beginning of my university career, and that really stoked my interest in robots as a whole. And I pursued that throughout the whole part of my university career. And I really wanted to do something where you got some hands-on experience. You got to really physically see the thing that you're working on doing real tasks and real work. And I found that really validating for me, and I really liked that part. So I joined Clearpath when it was still quite small. I think it was only 30 people when I joined. And I've kind of been on the ride as we've seen the takeoff of mobile robotics just really grow as a sector into what it is now and what it's going to be in the next few years.
Great, thanks for sharing. So both of you are kind of located in different parts of Ontario within the AI ecosystem. So James, could you share a little bit about the AI community in Kitchener-Waterloo and thoughts on its advancement in the region? And Mingjie, similarly after that, could you share about your thoughts on AI in Toronto?
So I guess I'll start. Yeah, Waterloo region is an excellent tech hub. It's really been growing significantly in the last few years. We have a lot of big companies that are based here. We have the Google offices here. There's a lot of other large investments that have been made in the technology community here. It's also really a good place for startups. We've seen many startups come out of the University of Waterloo, and really we have a lot of tools and groups that help foster that startup community, which has really been great. There's been a bunch of AI startups specifically that have spun out, been purchased by other larger companies. So I think it's really a great place to be advancing AI at this time.
Yeah, for me, Toronto is a great place for AI as well. Like, lots of investments was made either from government level or university level, and lots of AI companies are built in Toronto. In particular, there are lots of talented people as well. So it was a great place for AIs.
Great. Another thing you also share in common are that you both work at kind of small, medium enterprises. So James, you mentioned you were there when they were 30 people, and if you've been along for the ride, and Mingjie, you're also at a relatively small company compared to some of the larger enterprise organizations out there. So what is your experience working at a small, medium enterprise or growing in that kind of startup? And how might it be different than working at a larger company? So, things you enjoy or some challenges that you experience.
Yeah, I can start. Working in a small company is very interesting because you can basically start to interact with different sector of the company. For example, facing a customer in a sales meeting, or maybe talking to the salesperson and on how to pitch it to how to pitch your solutions to the customer. For example, there are also other opportunity, like you're also engaged with engineer, such that you can build your skill not only on your ML skill, but also engineering skill over time. And lots of interaction with different type of people that would that make your experience diverse.
Yeah, to just build on that, I think that being at a smaller company, you really have to take responsibility for a lot more of the project itself that you're working on. It means that you really have a bit more autonomy. You can work, you're more freedom to choose how you do things and what parts you want to work on and how you want to make them, and the diversity of the projects you get to work on. At larger companies, you might get pigeonholed into you're working on this very small piece of this much larger enterprise. But when the company is smaller, you're much more involved in all the different aspects. You have to know how your piece connects to everyone else. You have to really understand the bigger picture about what's going on that might not be the case at a larger company.
Great. So you both have kind of touched on, teams and what that looks like. Could you share a little bit more about your team composition within those small organizations and how your specific role fits within the team? So for Mingjie, you'd be a data scientist, and for James, you're their perception manager. So could you share a little bit about that?
Sure. So yeah, I'm the autonomy engineering manager for perception. So I lead the perception group that focuses on all of the different perception technologies that go into our robot. Basically anything to do with sensor inputs and making intelligent decisions about that. The other half of the autonomy team as a whole is obviously navigation, getting the robot to decide how to move around. So that's our other half. And then we're obviously a part of a much larger software organization that does all of the OS level work. So it's really about working together with all of these diverse sets of skills and these diverse teams to really make the larger software work as a whole.
Yeah, I guess Mingjie, similarly, could you explain a little bit more about what you do as a data scientist and what your kind of team composition looks like?
Yeah. Mostly I'm trying to develop prototype in phase that would help them to help clients to solve business questions, and sometimes also take part in clients meetings such that we understand more of the process knowledge as well as defining whether it's the right business metrics to validate on. And also after prototyping solutions, we also help to productionize it so that it can be used in real time.
Great. So I'm going to go with one more question before we move to the audience questions. And then if there are any, we'll circle back to mine. But what are some of the roles or skills that are required on a regular basis for you to effectively execute in projects? And maybe some skills that are required quite regularly that you wouldn't have expected when you started off in your role? I guess James could start.
Good question. I guess not surprising, but I think that a lot of people coming out of grad school specifically don't have a lot of experience with collaborative coding. So, you're in your grad school, you're very much working on your own project, and you don't have to worry about what everyone else is doing. When you start joining a real company in industry, you're just part of a bigger machine, and you need to make sure that you're developing software and tools that can work with everyone else. And that can be challenging at times, and it can be a bit of a jarring experience for many students when they join industry, but it's a very, very important skill that's used across many different applications and industries that I think people forget about at times.
Great. Mingjie, do you have anything to share on that?
Collaborative coding is definitely one of it. And in particular, there's those, the coding styles and whether or not it can be scalable in productions. That is also something that is not very taken consider during, for example, my study. Love the engineering skill would help you to move further in this.
Great. So I'm going to start taking some questions from the audience. This is from Angeline. What kind of data are you working with for your experiments? And in your experience, does it take a lot of formatting to make it suitable for analysis? So if either of you have any thoughts on that.
So I guess for us, we collect tons of data from our robots, both from in the field and from our test facility. In terms of does it need a lot of formatting? Not particularly in our case, because we're getting data directly from our robot, in the form of images or laser scans or 3D point clouds. So there are lots of methods already in existence that take that data and make it into a usable format. We also use a lot of data from autonomous vehicles. Although they are very different than what we are working on, you can test some simple tool or simple algorithms based on those data sets as well, and try to do some transfer learning in those cases.
For us, so usually the data is provided by a client. So usually we have to go to inspect whether it would satisfy the data requirement that we developed to understand whether we can solve a question or not. So if there's not enough data or not the right data, then we usually have to go back to our clients. Yes, there are a lot of cleaning data specifically, and even formatting, because some of the clients collect data into a different system. For example, operational data might have come from a different system or stored in a different system than a sensor type of data. And in those cases, we will try to match it up such that we will start to find that correlations or start to solve that business question.
Great. So both of you work with customers because you sell your products or services to a number of clients. So one attendee has a question regarding a customer's experience. How do you manage their expectations or misconceptions regarding AI applications and their limitations? James is laughing here.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. We definitely find that people have varying levels of their understanding of what AI is and what it's capable of. A lot of times people have seen too many movies and they think that we've already solved all of AI already, and the robot should be as smart as they are. So managing that expectation that yes, we're making great advances in how these machines work, and yes, they do a lot of great stuff, but they are still machines, and we haven't quite gotten to the iRobot level of AI yet from the movies. So yeah, there's always a balance there to get them to be a little more realistic about what they actually expect an AI system to be capable of.
Mingjie, I don't know if you face similar challenges.
Yes, for sure. Managing expectation is really key because some of the manufacturing partner that we're working at is just started their AI journey, and it actually is more than just run through the model and then give them the solutions. It's not really that. It's more like we take a peek into the data and starting to ask questions onto what could be relevant to maybe understand or even try to solve the problem. And that is usually a process, not just say a single meeting can finish. And sometimes client can get frustrated because they don't understand or we didn't try best to help them to understand what it really take to make it work. And that could, it's not just from the ML side, but also at the very beginnings of the funnel, you would have to start to educate your clients what AI is and what can it do and what can it not do.
Right, that seems to be really important. Okay, so I have one more specific question. It seems to be one specifically for James and one specific for Mingjie. So we'll start off with the one for James. What are some of the skills that you look for in those people who plan to transition to robotics? This person in particular is an experienced aerospace control system manager and is super keen to know about opportunities in the GTA.
So there's a huge diversity of skill sets you need to make any robot function. So depending on your specialty, there's usually a place for you. One of the big things that I would say is getting hands-on experience. Get out of the lab, go play with a real robot, see how it works, see it fail, and really experience those kind of interactions that you don't really get when you're working on just a data set in the lab. And I think that that's really what makes certain candidates stand out from others is when they have that hands-on experience, whether it be from playing their own, doing their own projects, working with open source projects, or with a team at their university. But really that kind of extra effort and really experiencing what these technologies can do really helps with understanding how to do the robotics work.
Great, that seems to be a common theme so far. For Mingjie, what are some of the specific tools you use for model development?
Yeah, so a lot of it is, a lot of my work is involved with prototyping solutions. So on our side, Python is the tech stack. And also like, for example, Jupyter notebooks and stuff is very key for developments and experimenting different kind of solutions. And also, we also have trying different algorithms using either traditional algorithm or even deep learning type of algorithms. So like either PyTorch or TensorFlow would come into play if you're playing with those algorithms.
Great, so I have time for one last question, I think. So I'm sure everyone is kind of curious to know, how do you kind of stay on top of the technical knowledge and know-how and research required to iterate and improve on the different products and projects you're working on? Because you're out of school, you're no longer exposed to maybe some of those pieces every day. How do your businesses help you stay on top of that knowledge that is required for your AI applications? Feel free to, Mingjie.
Sure. One thing is definitely talking amongst your peers. Another thing is talking amongst your colleagues and communicate different ideas on different architecture to solve the problems. That is definitely something that would improve your knowledge over time. Another thing is you're not just, if you don't want to get old like for 1 year and then you want to keep updates with some of the papers, especially on application type of paper that would help you to move along.
Yeah, staying on top of the AI industry is definitely a challenge. It's moving really fast, so it's changing every year, and you really got to actively be trying to stay up to date. At Clearpath, we try to send people to conferences, to some of the larger robotics conferences and AI conferences, so that they can go and discuss with researchers and the people that are innovating in the field, and really get a feel for where people are developing and what's new in the industry. And I think that really helps. We also try to maintain academic partnerships with various labs, both in Ontario and internationally, so that we can understand what they're working on and how that might change what we're doing in the future.
Great, thanks for all your responses. It seems that we are right on time. It is 1 p.m. and some of you may have, lunches or other things to get back to. So I would just like to thank both our presenters, James and Mingjie, for joining us today and sharing about their experiences and their projects at the organizations. We really appreciate your time. So have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining us.